to another edition of Mississippi Stories. I'm your host, Marshall Ramsey, editor-at-large at Mississippi Today. I've had the pleasure of knowing our guest today for a while. Got a chance to work with her back in the days when I would come out with books up at Lemuria Books, but she has now moved on and up and doing some great things. She is now the newly minted executive director for the Mississippi Book Festival. Oh, you don't know about the Mississippi Book Festival? Well, guys, you're going to find out about it today. We're going to tell you. I got to tell you, unfortunately, the pandemic has caused the last couple to go virtual. And not to say unfortunately, there is something magic about being around 5,000 to 10,000 people who love books. Trust me, it is an amazing event. But this year's, of course, got canceled by what happened with Delta. But we're going to talk a little bit today about what you can do to get a fix before next year's. But I'm very happy to welcome Ellen Rodgers Daniels with us. And congratulations, you've been with the Book Festival now for 2.5 years. You've replaced Holly Lang, who did a fantastic job getting the baby born. And now you've taken the reins and you're going to raise it to a toddler and get it going on up to teenage years. Ellen, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Marshall. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, no, I just arranged today with my authors for my panel so we can do a virtual panel, which was kind of like herding cats. I've got 3 amazing authors on my panel, but getting everybody with the same time so we could Zoom was a bit difficult, but we finally got it pulled off. But I can't wait to hear a little bit about some of the other panels, and I know they're going to be great. I got to tell you, I've been on a panel and I've moderated a panel in the history of the Mississippi Book Festival. I love both of them, to be honest with you. Now, it's kind of easy when you can just sit there and just say, oh, yeah, I draw pictures of cartoons and people, and that's easy, but, making sure everybody's talking and going on that and making sure it's entertaining, moderating is a lot of fun, too.
Well, it's certainly a job because you have to lead the conversation. So when there are those silences, it's up to you to fill them and keep the conversation going, but you do a wonderful job of it. And I'm really excited that we are going to be able to film your panel, Familiar Voices, with William Morris, Suzanne Cushman, and Johnny Bernhard. They are 3 wonderful Mississippi authors that have a great fan base, and we are thrilled to include them in the virtual festival.
Yeah, all 3 of their books are great. And Bill, of course, William Morris, he's got a semi-famous name there a little bit, but different William Morris there. But Bill's book is so wonderful. All 3 of the books are wonderful. I like Bill's in the sense that if you like Ted Lasso, you're probably going to like his book too, because there's so much of that. Just Bill's just incredible kindness that he showed an old singer that ended up causing, Bill to get all these great things to come to him too. And so it's a neat book. And of course, Susan's and Johnny's books are very, very touching also. And that's what I love about it. Also too, gives me a chance to read new books, which I always enjoy.
Absolutely. And that's what's so wonderful about the book festival is because you can go to a panel for an author that you already know, but there will be other authors on the panels. And so then you become familiar with their work and you're like, oh, well, maybe I want to read this person's stuff and, their whole bibliographies. I think that's really amazing. And I love, being able to facilitate the opportunity to see authors that you really love, but then introduce festival goers to authors that they might not know about and, get them new fans.
Yeah, that was really fun. I remember the first year and it was incredibly crowded just because it was an instant success and you just had it in the capital only. You hadn't expanded the footprint out. But I just remember bouncing from session to session and getting to hear from people that I kind of knew. But once you get to hear them and get to know them and get to meet them, it makes their books that much more alive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is one of the main goals of the Mississippi Book Festival is to create magic around books and authors and reading and getting people excited about that.
Well, and I've been in Mississippi now for 25 years, and I asked Mac McAnally this question once. I said, well, what is it? Is it that we have great stories or great storytellers? And of course, Mac gave an answer that would be perfect for a politician, but he said, I think it's a little bit of both.
Absolutely. I totally agree with Mac.
But I do. I think we go down, we have this tradition of sitting on the front porch, going downtown, listening to the local politicians speak, coming back to the front porch, sitting there and talking to each other and telling stories about the politician. And then somebody over in the corner sat down and go, oh, I'm going to change all the names. And then they win the Nobel Prize.
Exactly. So I'm going to tell you a funny thing that somebody said in one of the virtual panels. It's Helen Ellis, who has actually been to the Mississippi Book Festival 3 times. And she was on our essay panel this year, and Beth Ann Finley, the wonderful Beth Ann Finley, moderated that conversation. And Helen, who lives in New York City now, is originally from Alabama. And she said, look, I'm from the South. And in the South, storytelling is like competitive sport. And I love that because it just hit the nail on the head. I mean, the South is full. We are all storytellers in our own rights. We might not be authors, but we love a story.
We do. And we could tell some tall ones too. Beth Ann's book, by the way, her short story book, I mean, I always knew her for her short story book is amazing.
Yeah, the Heating and Cooling, those little mini memoirs, they are stunning. I remember I still worked at Lemuria at that time, and we got the, however many boxes that were ordered, and we started opening them, and we hadn't seen the physical copy yet. And it was such a beautiful object in itself. And then you started reading them, and they just slammed you back in your seat, just these tiny little vignettes that packed a massive punch. And that is Beth Ann. I mean, just in and of herself.
Yeah, I saw a piece the other day that she wrote about, she and her sister competing about the dresses they wore and everything. And then it turns out that she's talking about the dress her sister was buried in. I was like, oh my God, what a gut punch.
I just sat in silence for about 15 minutes after I read that. I mean,
yeah, but what a treasure though. Think about to have her and Tom in Oxford, I mean, but that's just one of and that's why I think the book festival itself was such a great idea, because it takes one of the things that we're very proud of here in Mississippi, but two, something that we obviously lead the world in, and by God, we should be out there promoting it. And it really was a great idea. Tell us a little bit about how the book festival was born.
So I was hoping you were going to ask that question. And so, a couple of people, book enthusiast advocates got together. I will name a few, of course, Holly Lang, Jerry Nash, the book festival's board president, and John Evans, who owns Lemuria Bookstore here in Jackson. Some of the greatest writers in the English language were born and raised and worked in Mississippi. So why didn't we have a Mississippi Book Festival? So it was just kind of a leap of faith to do this thing. And it just became an instant success. And it has grown every single year since its inception in 2015. There's no greater validation, I will say, than having authors come from all over this country and then getting emails back from them. And they were just like, that was one of the greatest book festivals I've ever been to. I love Mississippi. I did not know what to expect. And y'all blew me away because we are the hospitality state. And so we really like to, put the best Mississippi forward. And, for one day, a boiling hot day in August, a bright light gets to shine on Mississippi. I do love it when they're like, authors like, how should I dress? And I'm like, dress for hell's front porch is all I can say. Make sure you're comfortable.
Why did y'all choose August? I mean, obviously I know there's football season to consider and a bunch of other things, but how come August?
So that was my first question when I began working for the book festival in 2019. I was like, why have y'all chosen August in Mississippi? And they said, everybody's back from vacation. There is no SEC football or hunting. And SEC football and hunting in Mississippi, you
don't plan weddings or book festivals or in the football season.
No, when I got married, we had to have a television in one of the tents so people could watch the LSU game. I mean, like, priorities here, people.
Yeah, just as long as you're not, long as the groom isn't standing up in the front doing this, watching it,
I'm sure it's happened.
I'm sure it has too. It's been probably in Mississippi as well. And I guess another thing too is, I mean, you're talking about the Christmas buying seasons right ahead too. So it helps with the booksellers. And I have seen the lines like at the Lemuria tent, for instance, wrap around the block. And I talked to John Evans about it. And he said that like the first year, y'all nearly sold as many books at the book festival as you did for Christmas.
So that's, that is one of the things that I tell publishers when we're talking about recruiting authors to come. I say, Lemuria Bookstore, who's, a famous independent bookstore in, all over the United States, has their most significant day of sales of the entire year. In several years, it has surpassed the entire month of December, that one day.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's just,
that's
mind blowing. But like you said, if you see, and it's very efficient and it moves very well, and you see the people going through and getting the books, but there are so many people there that just genuinely love books, and they're there just all in one place. I got to tell you, one of my favorite two things that always have stuck out to me. Number one, I love the author's lounge. And I know that's not for general public. They can't go in there, but it's like a family reunion. You go in there and you run into people that you maybe haven't seen all year, and you just like, oh, hey, and they know your work, you know their work, and you say, I love what you're doing. And you get free Danish, which are great. You got to love free food, and that's a good thing. But to me, it is, people always ask me, why do you stay in Mississippi? And, because I'm a political cartoonist and I have great subjects to draw. Go figure.
Unending material.
Unending material. But the other thing is the arts community here, and particularly the writing community, are some of those generous and kind people that you'll ever bump into.
I completely agree. On all fronts. I mean, the author's lounge, who doesn't like free pastries? But then, you really get to kind of mingle with your fellow panelists at the book festival, whereas you kind of can't in the mix of the day because everything's so busy and you're getting from one place to the next. So it's a nice place to be able to go and relax and as I just said, talk to your fellow panelists. And the literary community here in Mississippi is so supportive of one another. Yeah. I follow everybody on social media, and it's really a beautiful thing to see everyone lifting each other up with, the publishing of new works or, anything like that. It's very heartening.
Bill Dunlap and I got to the author's signing area at the same time, and we were sitting next to each other, which, by the way, if I got to spend eternity with anybody, I want to spend it with Dunlap. He's got to be one of the most fun human beings on the planet.
Nobody like Billy D on this planet.
So we're sitting there and we're selling a book. We're selling a book there. There's an author on just a couple seats away from us that has a line that was running all the way to Vicksburg almost. And it was Angie Thomas, like on really her debut shot. And it was just so much fun to see so many adoring fans getting to meet her. And it was good. Of course, I've since gotten to really know Angie well, and I love her to death. But it was just so cool to see her get that moment to get to connect with her fans. So it's as rewarding for the authors as it is for readers as well.
Marshall, that was in 2017, and I was actually hired to photograph the Capitol lawn and kind of the activity that went on that day. And I remember that line, and I got such a great photo of all of those young people, most of them young people, lined up for Angie, and just how excited they were. Some of them had like stacks of books. They were getting one for everybody they knew. And I'm gonna have to tell you, I try not to pick favorites, but my favorite book festival story. In 2016, Angie was sitting in a panel and asked one of the authors, how do you get a book published? And in 2017, that's when Angie came with her debut, and she just exploded.
Yeah. And then she's now, when she said 3 just mega bestsellers, one of the most popular young, now she's into movies and producing movies. I'm like I said, there are few people that you meet that you think, yeah, they deserve every single bit of success they're getting. It's her.
Every single thing. She is a star, but she is the kindest, most generous soul you could ever hope to meet.
Yeah, and she's spoiled her dog beyond belief, but we don't want to get too far down into the weeds on that. But we're about Kobe.
Oh, sweet Kobe. Kobe is a star as well. And Angie's mother, Julia.
Oh my gosh. I would like to seriously sit down and interview her.
Yeah.
She told me some stories when I had Angie in to interview for Conversations for MPB, and oh my gosh, her mother was talking about the night that Meg Evers was shot and everything else, and you're just, and what she did to help raise Angie is just worthy of a book in its own right. She was a great mom, and she still is a great mom.
And she still is a great mother. I would probably lay down in 5 o'clock I-55 traffic for Julia. I mean, she is wonderful. When I see her, I get so excited because I love talking to her. And there's no bigger Angie Thomas fan than her mama. And she is behind her all the way. I just love seeing, what they're doing on social media. The love between that mother and that daughter is really just incredible.
Yeah, and it was just so neat to see that, like I said, to see her success blow up at the book festival. I know one of the weirdest moments for me was, it's 2 or 3 years ago, I was interviewing Candace Bushnell, who did Sex and the City. And so we're in the governor's, honorary office up in the Capitol, which is beautiful and ornate. I'm sitting there sweating because it's 900 degrees and I'm dressed like this. And I'm looking at her, she's just perfect, and just on, and she's just great. And I'm just like, oh, okay. So basically, we'll just call this interview "Dork in the City," 'cause I can't think of absolutely the most awkward person in the world you could have interview you than me. So it worked out great. We managed to break some ice. It was great. But I met Carl Milanis that time too. Oh, yeah. And oh my gosh, here's a guy who was, a Rhodes Scholar and a Navy Cross recipient in Vietnam, just a hero, a guy who's fought and struggled with PTSD, but one of the most beautiful writers ever.
Yeah, totally.
And so the reason I'm saying all this, I just want to thank you, because the book festival has allowed me not only to meet some of my heroes, but also to make new heroes, which is the whole point of the book festival, I think.
Yeah, that's that's my secret selfish thing is I just love getting to meet some of my favorite authors, and getting to learn, about new authors. I read probably more debuts than I do anything.
Yeah.
For some reason, debut novels. And I think that started with Donna Tartt's The Secret History. I read that when I was 17, and it just it blew me away. And so ever since, when I see something as a debut novel, I'm like, ooh, let me get that. Ooh, let me get that. So, I love I love that the festival gives debut authors the chance to really kind of blast onto the scene and get a whole community familiar with them and get them reading their books. Because in my opinion, and now you can probably speak to this, I'm a reader. I am not a writer. So nothing seems more difficult to me than writing a book. I mean, that seems like the most monumental task. And I tip my hat to anybody that is able to do it.
Yeah, I've had a couple short story books, and of course, obviously cartoons, which is a different kind of writing altogether. But in a way, it's the same thing, because I just picture something in my head, I try to describe it. But anybody who can write a book, that can crank out 90,000 words. And I'm just looking at it going, how did you do that? How do you remember what goes on from here to here? And do you map that out? And I mean, I would love to do a podcast just with creative people saying, okay, how does this work for you? How's the process work? Because it's fascinating. Everybody seems to do it differently.
I mean, they really do. I mean, there's kind of a blueprint a little bit, but everybody kind of has their own way of doing it. I love hearing authors talk about their creative process. I just think that's completely fascinating. Like, exactly, how did you make these 90,000 words into something that's cohesive? Yeah,
definitely. On that, you talked about you like to read, obviously, which is helpful for what you do for a living. When you were growing up in Rolling Fork, when you were little, were you a big reader when you were a kid? And what were some of your favorite books as a kid?
I really was a really big reader as a kid. So, gosh, I think the book that I've probably read more than any other book on this planet was a book that my grandmother, who I named my child after, gave me when I was 10 years old, and that is A Wrinkle in Time by Madeleine L'Engle.
Yes, that's one of my favorites too.
I actually reread it again this year because I was talking to somebody. I was like, I just needed some comfort. And they were like, that book brings you comfort? And I was like, yes, because I'm so familiar with it. As
long as you can remember square roots, you can get through the times we live in, right?
Exactly.
If somebody bouncing a ball, you can. I don't know about you on that book, but for me, when I reread it as an adult, I mean, I was a smart kid, obviously. But when I read as an adult, it was like, whoa, okay, this is incredibly deep.
Yeah.
I had obviously missed a few things.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably plenty I didn't pick up as a kid when I would read it, but now I love reading it as an adult. I mean, I love reading that whole Time Quintet series as an adult,
Yeah.
but A Wrinkle in Time was really, a formative book for me.
Yeah, well, me too. It and Where the Red Fern Grows were probably two of my favorites as a kid.
Oh,
That has got to be the saddest book on the planet. It makes Old Yeller a comedy,
oh gosh, Where the Red Fern Grows, what a life ruiner, but still such an incredible book.
Yeah. Yeah, Pippi Longstockings. There were a bunch of them because were you like taken to the library? Because I was taken to the library as a kid a lot. Miss Judy was our librarian, and she was just so formative because she was always like, "I've got the book for you. You're going to love this."
Librarians, are they the greatest people on earth? I mean, I think probably so, but yeah, I loved going to, I'm from a little tiny town in the Delta called Rolling Fork. We had a really great library, and we still do. And I would go like every Friday and get a new book. But every time we would come to Jackson, which was often because, I mean, there's not much to get in Rolling Fork. So you have to drive outside of town to get something. We would come to Jackson. We would go to Oz at Lemuria, the children's section. I would just sit in there for hours looking at books. So, I mean, Oz books is also very formative in creating my love of reading and of books. So,
and little did you know that you would actually spend time working there.
Oh, I spent quite some time working there. I think it was like 13 years collectively. And so the reason that I love working for the book festival is because I will always be a bookseller.
Yeah.
When I go into Lemuria several times a week, and I basically always sell a book every time I'm in there. So, I think this is just another way to keep kind of further that selling books is, introducing people to new books. And, like I've said about 5 times during this conversation, just, introducing people and getting them excited about new authors they might not have ever heard of.
Right.
There's so many, look, I could live 10 lifetimes and never read all of the books that I want to read. And there's so many things to choose from. So, I mean, I need guidance sometimes about, what to pay attention to or check out. So I hope that that's something that we, achieve with the Mississippi Book Festival.
Last year obviously was a heartbreak. The pandemic hit, it got canceled, and then suddenly, the vaccine came out and the numbers dropped and we felt good and we started taking our masks off and we could get out a little bit. And then the Delta variant comes roaring, I guess it started in India, and the next thing you know, and I think the first real outbreak here was at the Neshoba County Fair, which is a couple weeks before the book festival. And by that point, the hospitals were starting to fill up. And y'all, because you were on the radio with me and we were saying, okay, we're going to have it. We're going to do it. And then, y'all got to the point where you just had to pull the trigger and you said no. And I know that was an awful decision to have to make.
I mean, we canceled 10 days before the festival. And so we just, watching a year of work crumble in like 16 hours, I said, well, we weren't right sized before, we certainly are now.
Yeah.
But, we did not see another way.
Right.
There was no way to ensure everybody's health and safety and facilitate the gathering of such large groups of people indoors. Everybody's safety is the most important. And so now we've made it virtual, and it released on Tuesday of this week. And, people are really engaging with it. And that's kind of all we can really ask for. If we can't all be together, we still want to highlight the wonderful group of authors and moderators who planned to come and who made the transition with us. I mean, we're eternally grateful for all of that.
The crazy thing about it is, and as much as I hate that we lost the experience of getting to be together and getting to, do all the things that we've been talking about for the last 20 minutes, in a way, this is great because it's out there for the whole world to see. Granted, the book festival is incredibly blessed because it's had C-SPAN there, filming several of them, but this is something that's there all the time for people to see. And I can't help but think that in a way, this is going to turn out to be a little bit of a silver lining on that.
Well, we've learned, as badly as COVID has excuse me, sucked. We have learned a lot about how we can still stay in touch with each other and still remain safe. And Zoom, where would we be without Zoom and all
Oh
of this?
man, this is like right now. I mean, I get to enjoy the blue in your background. It's fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And I get to see your beautiful fresh cut flowers back there.
Exactly. In my kitchen of all places.
In your kitchen. So it's, we have learned a lot. We've recorded every panel at the festival since 2015, which is all lives on our replay section on our website.
Yeah.
But I feel like, that was all in person at the festival. So Zoom and COVID have helped us learn that we don't all have to be in person, but we can all still be together in this virtual space.
Well, I hope that we get to the point, and this is, I guess, my editorial, but I hope we get to the point where this can be, either the virus mutates into something that doesn't send people into the ICU, or, we figure out some way through medication, and we have a vaccine now that's effective to make this more of an endemic thing like the flu, to where we can continue to have it. Let me ask you this, because obviously, sponsors are important, and you've had some great sponsors throughout the years. How would they react? I mean, obviously, I know that's a heartbreak for them to, for us not to have it.
Well, certainly, but we called every single funder for 2021, and we were like, hey, this is kind of where we're going, and everyone was like, you're absolutely making the right decision. We completely agree with you. Do what you have to do, and that gave us a lot of hope for the future, and we so appreciate our funders, standing behind us and really, kind of giving us the push that we really needed. Because there is, when you have so many wonderful funders and you think about canceling something that people have, donated real dollars to, you're like, how is this going to seem to them? And everybody was 150% supportive.
That's awesome. So right now it's scheduled for August of next year.
August 20th, 2022.
Okay, very good. August 20th, 2022. You're starting to put together a slate of authors. I know you'll release that when the time comes. But before, obviously, we don't want to think too much about next year when we've got this year still going on. Tell us some of the great virtual panels that people can see.
I mean, we have something for every type of reader. People are usually fiction readers or they're nonfiction readers. And I completely get that. We have a dynamite memoir panel, which is moderated by the wonderful Margaret McMullen, who's
isn't she great? I love Margaret. I mean, I have a complete, don't tell her husband that because I have a crush on him too. But I mean, I have a crush on both of them. They're because his documentary that he did this year on the changing of the flag was fantastic too. But God, she's just fantastic.
I mean, Margaret is she is such a gift to the festival. I'm telling you, I don't think there's anybody that Margaret does not know.
I don't think she has a cavity.
Yeah.
You got this big smile. I mean, it's just like, there's nothing wrong with you.
1,000-watt light bulb smile for sure.
She's great. Yeah.
And she is such a great reader, and she knows so many authors, and she loves to go out and invite people to come to the book festival. Margaret is a huge reason that we got Justice Sonia Sotomayor in 2019. So Margaret moderates a fabulous memoir panel with Allison Moore, who's a singer-songwriter from Nashville. She's Shelby Lynn's sister.
Yeah.
And then we have got Brian Broom, who is from Pittsburgh. It's called Punch Me Up to the Gods. And I'm totally blanking. Oh, Elizabeth Mickey Brenna, who lives in New Orleans, but her book her memoir is called Speak Okinawa. Mm-hmm. And that is such a wonderful panel. I would love for people to go view that. But then we've got, Jerry Mitchell with his book, Race Against Time. That is just, Jerry did so much great work, investigative reporting work to get justice for families that, endured horrors during the civil rights era.
Yeah, I worked with Jerry a lot of the time that he did a lot of the reporting for that. I mean, I started in 96 and he was there a lot earlier. And of course, obviously the Medgar Evers case when he broke that. But it was fun watching the process. And he and I were
Yeah.
Pulitzer finalists the same year, and I thought he should have won it. He of course was more modest than I was about that. But when I read the book, I thought it was really a good breezy read. I was surprised. I thought, I've read a zillion history books, and I was there when he was doing most of this. But I thought I learned a lot of stuff that I didn't know. I thought it was really a good book.
It's very accessible, and I think that's a little bit of a reason why I shy away from nonfiction sometimes, because I like something that's really got a narrative.
Yeah.
But Jerry's does, and I really adore narrative nonfiction because I'm actually learning about something.
Yeah.
While it's incredibly readable, and like the same goes with Curtis Wilkie's book.
Yeah.
At the virtual festival.
I did not realize that Dave Dennis's father was who that was the protagonist in that book. And
yeah.
He ran for governor a few years ago, and I think I got the last name right. It's that kind of day. But when I was reading Curtis, I interviewed Curtis for the book, and I read it, and I was just like going, "Oh my God, his dad was a hero." I mean, I could not have had the courage to do that, to go undercover, and because he could have been killed at any second.
Oh, I think so. It's Tom Landrum.
Yeah.
And
David Landrum's dad. I'm sorry. I said Dennis. I was thinking about somebody else, but yeah, David Landrum's.
They had 5 small children at that time. Yeah. And Anne Landrum and their son Mike, Judge Charles Pickering, who was the county prosecutor at the time, he's on the panel with Curtis. Mm-hmm. And Miss Landrum talked about how, she and Tom really sat down and just made this decision. They were like, this has got to be done. Somebody needs to change this. And so they made the sacrifice. They lived in fear for years.
Yeah.
It's really just, a total hero, and got justice for Vernon Damer's murder.
Yeah.
Then just.
Yeah, Dennis and Vernon Jr. I got to meet them and interview them, and of course Vernon Jr. looks just like his father. Just a clone of him. But there was a great picture that it's in, and I think Curtis had it in his book, of the boys in their uniform standing looking at the burned out house that their father had lost his life in to protect the rights that they were in uniform to defend. And it was just like, okay.
Oh.
Yeah. And Curtis.
There are words.
Yeah, Curtis is, I could, number one, if Curtis wrote anything, I'd read it. And number two, if he read it, even the phone book, I would listen to it.
Just love him.
Yeah, next to Morgan Freeman, he's got the best voice in Mississippi.
He's got an incredible voice.
Yeah.
But then we also have a Pulitzer Prize winning author this year, Kai Bird. He wrote The Outlier, The Unfinished Presidency of Jimmy Carter. And he is in conversation with the wonderful Katie Blunt, who's the executive director of the Mississippi Department of Archives and History. And that is a truly wonderful conversation. Pulitzer Prize winning author, of course, it's, he's such a wonderful speaker. And I learned so much about Jimmy Carter that I didn't know just in listening to their conversation. So fantastic book and panel. But then we've got so much fiction, Marshall. We have the debut panel, of course. We have our Southern Writers panel, and then our young adult. Young adult is kind of a genre that I really became familiar with while I was working at Lemuria, and people who are into the young adult genre are complete fanatics, and I love it. I can't think of a more dedicated fan base of anything than young adult readers. And all of our young adult authors who are on that panel are from Mississippi. We've got Angie Thomas, Jennifer Moffett, who's from the coast, and Heather Truitt, who is up in North Mississippi. Mississippi is overrun with wonderful writers, and for a state that's so kind of sparsely populated, I think we have a pretty good percentage of our population that are authors, which is just incredible.
Yeah, considering we have somebody that's actually won the National Book Award twice.
Twice. Queen Jesmond. William Faulkner at least spaced them out a little bit more. Jesmond just can't lose. She's just. Wow.
She's amazing. I got to interview her for conversations, and I just being in the same room with her, but she's just like incredibly chill, very, very quiet, very unassuming. And I'm like, you're like book royalty. Can I
She did.
yeah, it just, but once again, from Mississippi, and her work is very rooted in her experiences in the coast and
Yeah.
growing up on the coast. It's just really powerful.
I mean, everything she writes, I mean, is just like, and I mean this in the highest form of a compliment, just a sledgehammer. I mean, it's just like you can't just be like, oh, well, yeah, that was pretty good. I mean, it is like transformative. I mean, it will kind of change the way you feel about the world. I mean, she is so gifted.
She can rip you out of your world and make you see the world through her eyes.
And I think that is what's great writing is supposed to do. I mean, because I only actually know my own life experience, but to really be able to transport a reader to kind of understand your life experience, I mean.
Well, and that's what Angie did with The Hate U Give. She caught that wave before Black Lives Matters hit and everything else, because she had seen a case out in San Francisco, and she wrote the paper for Bellhaven for it. And of course, the rest is history. Her professor, to his credit, said, "This is really good. You ought to write it a little bit more."
Oh, Howard Barr.
Yeah. So yeah. On that, but that's the beauty of it. Like I said, we've got all these kind of stories, and these are the kind of stories that you hear during the interviews.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you learn how these books are born.
Right.
And, as a certified book nerd, I want to know all of it. I mean, I want to know the whole backstory, how you did it, why you did it. And that's what's so great about book festivals is you get the opportunity to hear all those things.
How, obviously COVID kind of screwed up everybody, but it screwed up us, but it screwed up everybody else. How do we rank compared to some of the other book festivals? Because I know we're brand new and we're growing, but I think we kind of started off in a pretty strong spot, didn't we?
Yeah, and and I certainly cannot take credit for this. This is, the book festival has built a brand now that people really know about, authors and publishers, that authors want to come here and experience this book festival. And we are very in line with all of the other book festivals around the country. I mean, like the Texas Book Festival and the Southern Festival of Books in Nashville, they're very old, but for such a young book festival, we compare very well to them.
Well, I mean, once again, we have that star power. I mean, when you get the Sonic Boom and John Grisham, kicking off the inaugural book festival. I mean,
like the standard was set pretty high that day, and I appreciate that.
There was I'll tell you a really cool moment from that moment, and I remember there were 3 guys there that were protesting because they wanted to keep the old state flag. And they were there, and nobody heckled them, nobody harassed them, and they didn't heckle anybody, they didn't harass them. And after a while, it's like they kind of quit protesting and actually started enjoying them. So it was just such a surreal moment that is like, well, you would think there would be trouble or something, but just everybody in the crowd was kind of like, no, we're here to celebrate what's good about Mississippi and the books. So if you want to do that, great, stick around. If not, y'all do it today. So,
yeah, exactly. Everybody kind of put aside all their feelings about, whatever is going on and just enjoy books.
Yeah, definitely on that. The book business has changed so much, and it's of course, I grew up in the newspaper business. I can tell you what's happened to anything printed on paper. It's one thing, and this is just and I've self-published books, so and I've sold a lot of them. I've been very fortunate. One thing my cousin once told me, and he's sold a lot of books, is that when you go into a bookstore, just remember they don't sell books, you sell books as an author. You have to really work, and that obviously is important. But it seems like to me, everything there's people you can now buy them instantly on this. But I think people still like a really nice printed book if it's an event. Yeah. And I mean, like beautiful illustrations, beautiful paper, beautiful cover, beautiful, it's good as a gift. And then the other, I mean, I feel like that the book business is solid in the respect that that's always going to exist.
That was, of course, everybody was worried about, all industries during COVID. And, of course, I was concerned about the book business. Publishing they were okay because everybody was stuck at home. They were like, I hadn't read a book in a while. Let me do that. I mean, I think, book sales went up for publishers, which is really kind of, which is awesome. I can tell how many books I bought during COVID because my bookshelf was full. So I just started stacking them on top. And I said, if anyone, I was like, if anyone says that I did not support my local independent bookseller during the pandemic, I would like to direct their attention to these stacks of books that are now covering up the painting that's hung over the bookshelves.
I tell you, the hardest thing for me, Ellen, was that when I moved into a house with less bookshelves, and I had to weed my books. And they got good homes. Now, it is hard to get rid of books sometimes. I will say that. But that was one of the hardest decisions because I didn't realize how. I was like, well, I might want to reread that one again. There's funny. They're part of the family.
Oh, so this is kind of a secret, but it's about to not be anymore. My husband doesn't read books. And everybody's like, really? I mean, how did y'all? I was like, but you know what the good thing is? All the book space is my space. I don't have to share that with anyone.
That's kind of nice. That's like having the whole closet to yourself.
Exactly.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
What book are you reading right now?
I'm actually reading a book that has not come out yet. It's called To Paradise. It's by Hanya Yanagihara.
Mm-hmm.
She wrote a book I think it was released in 2015. It's called A Little Life. And I think about the characters from that book every single day.
Wow.
I'm hesitant to recommend it because it is such a devastating book. I actually gave it to my father a few years ago, and he called me one night just going crazy. How dare you give me? So he was so mad. He was like, does it ever get better? Like for this main character, does his life ever get easier? I was like, well, not really. But I mean, it has really stuck with me. And so when I heard that she had a new one coming out, I just was so excited. But I'm actually reading a couple of things. I'm reading another one called Somebody's Daughter by Ashley Ford, which is a memoir that came out this year. I love a memoir. What are you reading, Marshall?
Right now, I knew you were going to ask that, and I have not read anything in about the last, 5 weeks, just because I had to finish up a huge project that had me doing research. So I was doing that. I have been reading Ron Chernow's Grant.
Oh, yeah.
Which is great. And a friend of mine wrote a really good book on the battle. I like nonfiction. I do that, but I like fiction too. I just haven't read it. I need to pick up a couple of fictions. I've got Carl Malanis's Deep River to read, which is great. His book on Vietnam, by the way, and With the Old Breed from Peleliu to Okinawa by Eugene Sledge are the two best war books I've ever read.
Yeah, I mean, Carl Marlantes' Matterhorn became an instant war classic.
Yeah, it is. It is that good. And there is a scene, and I'm not even going to mention what it is because it's very embarrassing, about where some people got some invasive little parasites in their body at the beginning of it that should make everybody in the world walk around funny. But the way Carl's just so powerful a writer, you're just like, oh my God. And I asked him about that. I said, how much truth is in this book? And he said, just remember what Mark Twain said, write about what you know. So,
God.
So it was pretty scary, but those are the two that I'm doing right now, but I really do need to sit down and find a good book now that I actually have a little bit of time left in the day. So,
sometimes I just get in a reading slump and I just have to let it happen.
Yeah.
It's so frustrating to me, of course, but if I try and force myself to read something that I know is going to be good, it just kind of ruins it for me. So I just need to watch some Great British Baking Show and just let the reading slump pass. And it does.
For doing cartoons and for editorial cartoons, generally reading helps better than watching television or listening to radio. So I'm reading a lot during the day. I'm reading, I still read newspapers. I mean, online, mind you, but I still read them online. And I think a good novel, especially fiction, is a great palate cleanser.
Yeah.
After you read all the garbage that's going on in the world, it's kind of nice to actually read somebody else's take on the world on that. But So anyway, sorry I couldn't give you a direct answer on that. I do. Those are the two that are in my queue, and I've read about half of Grant, and then I kind of walked away on the project on that. Chernow reminds me of J.K. Rowling in the sense that he creates scenes so well. You just feel like you're there on that. And I know Bruce Livingston, who's a fantastic pianist and probably one of the best college professors I've ever come across. He's just fantastic. He goes up Ole Miss, and he was telling me that he got to see Hamilton with Chernow. And I was just like, I hate you. Just to let you know, I'm so jealous of you. That's unbelievable.
Go ahead and brag for a second.
No, that was a very humble.
Oh, no, I'm kidding. That's amazing.
I know. I was like, I would so love to meet. It's like, oh, that's cool. But well, before it goes, is there anything I haven't asked you right or covered or that I've missed, or because I tend to do that? I mean, I turned David Landerman into Dave Dennis today. So there you go.
Oh.
They're two different people, but they both ran for office. So I can say
exactly. It's okay.
My brain.
I just want to draw everybody's attention to our website, which is www.msbookfestival.com.
Yes.
And we've got 31 panels on there with 110 authors and moderators who participated. And we've got some great stuff. And I hope that everybody enjoys it. And tells their friends and family about it, and we will all get to be together again next year.
I can't wait. I in fact, it's enough inspiration for me to come out with a book because I want to get back in the authors.
You just let me know.
I need to do that. It's funny. There for a while, I actually started writing short stories, and then I haven't done that in a while. And then the other day, I sat down and wrote one again. I was like, it's just weird. Writing it's just such a different thing than what I'm used to doing creatively.
But I think what you do seems incredibly difficult as well. I mean, in one cartoon, you need to convey a whole moment or idea. I mean, I wouldn't even know where to start. Well,
thank you.
Nobody's better than you.
Oh, I appreciate that. Some days I'm better than I am.
We all have our our banner days, right?
But you and I feel the same way about being here, though. And it's I think for what we do, there's no better place. And I'm so glad you got the new gig. And Holly did an amazing job. I've always said that she could put on World War III successfully. She's just very good at organizing things and getting things put together. But you are too, and you've got a love for books, and I think the festival is going to go in a great direction.
Well, I mean, I don't know how Holly can do all the things that she does. She, it was an honor to work under her and learn this whole thing, because let me tell you, there's a lot of moving parts, but she can do it all, but we have got a great team.
You've got a great team too.
We have a new deputy director who is a fireball. She has got so many great ideas. Her name is Jordan Perry, and I am so excited to have her. And we have a wonderful board. I mean, our board is so supportive, and couldn't ask for more. Excellent. We'll throw that website out one more time just for everybody, and it's www.msbookfestival.com. Easy enough to remember. Good deal. Well, I'll get in training and try to write something and come out with something so I can come see y'all next year. But if not, I'll be there as a civilian because I'm definitely not going to miss it. Oh, no, you better not. I will hold you accountable to that. Sounds like a deal. All right. Well, it's good visiting with you, and thanks. Thanks, Marshall. I appreciate it. Bye-bye. Bye. Thank you for watching this episode of Mississippi Stories. Make sure to subscribe to the Mississippi Today YouTube channel and click the bell to be notified every time a new video uploads.